Good afternoon, fellow patriots. This is Matt Shea, and welcome to Patriot Radio, broadcasting live from deep inside the heart of the future Liberty State. Brought to you once again by On Fire Ministries, in the legacy of Dr. Stan Monteith, bringing you the story behind the story and the news behind the news, where it's not about right or left, it's about right and wrong. It's about our hope not being in man, but in Jesus Christ. About not ending in prayer, but moving to action. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Father, deliver us from the evil one.
Welcome to Patriot Radio.
Good afternoon. Today on Patriot Radio, massive moves in the Middle East. Also, on the national front, some very odd things beginning to happen, just as we predicted here months ago, where there is domestic terrorists, real ones, that are beginning to show their heads. And lastly, a call for war by the jihadis in Europe. Patriot Radio, we're here to arm you with knowledge and facts to prepare your family for the events that are ahead, indeed, the events that are already upon us. But remember, there is no fear in what we are facing right now. When Americans and free peoples all over the world stand up together, we've already won, but we've got to stand. The Summer of Harvest and Patriot Radio, arm in arm. Now, some of you today on the liberal side may need some Kleenex, because we're going to talk about some great victories today as well and give you some encouragement, patriots, across the United States and far beyond, with our special guests, Mark Sutherland and David Sumrall, who have been at the forefront of the fight for freedom and liberty around the world. Also, as you prepare for the times ahead, you're going to want to go and check out some of our back episodes. And to do that, you can go and subscribe to us on Rumble at Patriot Radio US and follow us on Telegram at Patriot Radio for real-time intelligence updates and breaking news. Again, when the things have been happening around the world and everybody wants to know what's going on, that Telegram channel is followed by many, many people at the national level. Also, if you want to support some great organizations, you can always go to Epoch Times and use promo code Patriot Radio, and also zstacklife.com/Patriot Radio as well. Today, our Bible teaching is out of 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 5. And I want you just to internalize this, receive it. But the goal of our instruction is love from a pure heart, from a good conscience, and from a sincere faith. In other words, the level of our righteousness, our right living, is going to determine our effectiveness from what we have received with that instruction. And in this time that we're in, it is imperative that all of us do some inward self-searching and self-seeking growth. In other words, we all need to grow. And this self-searching inwardly, where do I have wickedness in my own life? Where am I not walking close to the Lord? Where am I leaving the Holy Spirit out of the equation? Where am I living a double-minded life? For example, if you show up to church on Sunday and then 2 hours later, you're walking out of the smoke shop, there might be an issue with your double-mindedness. You know, you can have all the deliverance in the world, but if you always keep the door open for the enemy to come in, you're not going to be as effective as someone who is listening to instruction, having a pure heart, a good conscience, and a sincere faith. And today, of all days, we as Christians need that sincerity of our faith, because people are hungry. They're longing for authenticity. That brings us now to the Jesus glorifying video for today. It is becoming such a phenomenon that I'm hearing from missionaries that are coming back to the United States, and they're actually using this now in the mission field. They're asking people, have you seen the man in white? Because it's so prevalent. And the people that have seen the man in white throughout the Middle East, throughout Africa, they have seen him in visions, in dreams, sometimes with their waking eyes. And that man in white is Jesus Christ. And so there is a revival happening in the Middle East. And here is one such testimony. Roll the clip.
Iranians are growing tired of the Ayatollahs and a nation led by the empty promises of their Islamic theocracy.
If this is what Islam has brought us in the last 45 years, we're not interested.
According to Todd Nettleton of the Voice of the Martyrs, the faith option many are choosing is Jesus, with at least 1 million Muslims reportedly leaving Islam for Christianity. How's the regime reacting to this? We've heard 50,000 of 75,000 mosques have closed.
And they certainly see the growth of the church. They certainly see Christian evangelism as a form of dissent.
He explains how Muslims are experiencing dreams and visions, leading many to find purpose and a different understanding of God.
That different understanding of God is a personal encounter with Jesus Christ. That he's not just somebody that is out there kind of talked about, an idea, but he is a personal Lord and Savior. And he wants to encounter each one of us in a very personal and intimate way. What a beautiful, beautiful picture of God meeting people where they're at, even in the Middle East. And that brings us now to your daily intelligence update. Coming to us from the globalist front.
Those naughty globalists.
From Technocracy News, Brazil leads the largest free speech rally in history. 45,000 Brazilians joined former President Jair Bolsonaro to protest the banning of X in Brazil. 45,000 protesters in the street, and also they cannot shut that down. I think that's beginning to scare the dictators with judiciary robes on there in Brazil, but also the globalists are watching this as well. People are rising up, and the globalists understand they're losing control. Therefore, we're going to see the globalists trying to push forward faster than they really wanted to here in the next little while. So we're going to see some really dramatic, odd things that might seem a little bit out of place or gigantically out of place in the lead up to the election here and following the election here in the United States. So don't be caught off guard by it. The globalists are being pushed out of their decision cycle by patriots like you and me. Also from Frank Gaffney, in 12 days, global elitists will put world government on steroids. The perpetrators don't want us to know about it. But that's the purpose of the upcoming Summit of the Future, and the accord it is supposed to adopt, dubbed the, quote, Pact of the Future at the United Nations. Now, we've covered this a little bit. I actually talked about this with Alex Newman. And this idea really is to begin to enshrine the superstructure for one world government, one world religion, and one world economy. Now, they're never going to call it that outright. But this is to try to get the agreement going forward so that at the end of World War III, they can implement this plan. And the only thing but standing between them and success, well, it's you and I. And that brings us now to the China front. It's pretty amazing how everyone is talking about alleged Russian paid right-wing influencers and yet not actual Chinese spies infiltrating the Democrat Party. Linda Soon, a former aide to New York State Governor Kathy Hochul, exits the Brooklyn federal court after she was charged with acting as an unregistered agent of China's government in New York City. And the title of the article is, quote, How China Used a Mid-Level Government Aide in New York to Influence U.S. politics. How about we start paying attention to that? Where's our counterintelligence apparatus? Anybody, Bueller? That brings us next to the U.S. House of Representatives has voted to ban new drones from the Chinese manufacturer DJI. Now, Travis, certain people were warned about this several years ago when they were thinking about purchasing drones. Because everything that drone sees made by DJI and where it goes and all of the metadata is sent back to China. Let's not be a party to helping the Chinese collect intelligence on Americans and America. Also, China warns Philippines yet again. Chinese authorities said relations with the Philippines are at a, quote, crossroads, and Manila should seriously consider the future of the region in a commentary published by a CCP-controlled newspaper Monday. China-Philippines relationships have been very, very degraded as of late, as the Chinese attempt to bully the Philippines out of their rightful possessions and waters in the South China Sea. And that brings us now to the Middle East front. The UK, France, and Germany have taken swift action to cancel their bilateral air services agreements with Iran. This plain language, they want to cancel flights to Iran. In addition, they have strongly condemned Iran's transfer of missiles to Russia. Russia's procurement of Iranian ballistic missiles is really the escalation that has caused this. And, quote, it is a direct threat to European security. Also, the IDF and the Israeli Air Force very active here in the last couple of days. Senior Hezbollah Rudwan commander eliminated today in an airstrike along with 3 other key Hamas leaders, the head of surveillance and targeting in Hamas's intelligence division among them, and 2 top Hamas officers eliminated in airstrikes today. Also, Benjamin Netanyahu has ordered his cabinet and ordered his forces to begin plans and preparations for a war in the north, which means an invasion of Lebanon. Now, if you are unfamiliar with that whole situation, Hezbollah is supposed to be north of what's called the Litani River, and that has not really ever happened or been enforced, and the Israelis are finally moving on that. Also, from the Russia front, Ukraine launches large drone attack on Moscow. Ukraine struck Russia with around 150 drones overnight, hitting Moscow in the largest such attack. 3 of Moscow's 4 airports were closed for over 6 hours, and about 50 flights were delayed or diverted. Russian authorities said it shot down at least 20 of those drones around Moscow and more in 8 other regions. Energy and oil facilities, along with at least 1 high-rise apartment building, were struck as the Ukrainians continue to strike at critical infrastructure inside of Russia. Also, the United Kingdom releases thousands of prisoners to ease, quote, jail overcrowding. Here's what this really is. Every time you see communists come into power, they want to foment chaos in a society. One of the ways that they do this, and Lenin did this as well, one of the ways they do this is they will open the doors of the jails and let out those who have really no moral compass or have been involved in violent crime, etc., to sow more chaos in a society. We're now seeing that happen in the United Kingdom. And one of my favorite, I love this, one of my favorite pictures, at least of late, has been how Viktor Orban has just said, you're not going to bully Hungary. We're going to stand on our principles. We're a Christian nation. We're going to stand on principles. So as a result, Brussels threatened Orban with a big fine and Hungary with a big fine if they did not take illegal immigrants. So what happened? Belgium panics as Hungary's Orban expected to make good on his promise to bus illegals. Does this sound familiar? To migration-loving EU capital Brussels. So he's saying, like, if you want us to take these migrants, we're going to bus them to your capital. I wonder if anybody's going to be doing that to Olympia. Just leave that hanging in the air for a little bit. And also, a very interesting thing happened in Paris. This is very critical. People need to pay attention to this. If you ever see this, I saw this once actually here in Spokane. It's called the Shahada. And you will see an Islamic flag with Islamic music on it. And that has to be done before jihad takes place. In other words, Muslims believe that they have to give people an opportunity to convert to Islam before they start jihad in a place. So you're starting to see this now in Europe, particularly in France. Visegrad 24 has this. Islamist speaker at an anti-Israel protest in Paris announces, quote, "It's time to spread the intifadas to the streets of Paris and its suburbs." In other words, that is a call to war, a call to jihad in Europe. And that brings us now to the South American front. A lot happening in South America, and something I've actually been waiting for a little bit. We were actually vacationing and when this first happened, but if you missed this, the head of the Zetas was tricked into flying into the United States by one of El Chapo's sons and then promptly arrested in Texas. Well, that obviously should start a civil war, right? Well, it didn't happen until apparently yesterday. Video, and there's multiple reports of this, video reportedly shows a MFMZ convoy operating near Sinaloa. And again, you have the followers of El Chapo and his sons, and then the Zetas, the followers of the man who was arrested, starting a civil war in Mexico. Another video, Chapitos threatening Zambadistas following the outbreak of the Sinaloa cartel civil war today. So the Sinaloa cartel in civil war right now. Just to very quickly, El Chapo's forces are actually smaller than the Zetas by a lot. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, especially since the U.S. government was involved in that arrest. Also coming to us out of Ecuador, the La Roca prison in Ecuador, which houses former Vice President of Ecuador, Jorge Glass, who was arrested in a controversial police raid against the Mexican embassy in April, had a drone attack on the prison. Now check this out. It's incredible. A prison was actually struck by a drone. Here's what's an important learning point out of this, is that we're likely to see the use of drones here in the United States in a similar capacity to strike property targets. Now remember, we've been talking about this for several months, that the plan of the communists and the jihadis is to begin to target religious leaders and political leaders and their property. Over the weekend, Greg Locke's home was sprayed by automatic gunfire, and his daughter was there, by the way. Prayers out to their family. But that just highlights the fact that this is going to increase as we come into the election and then the aftermath of the election as Trump wins. Also, from Knightsbridge Research, and by the way, if you don't know Knightsbridge Research, absolutely fantastic analysis all the way across the board. I just strongly urge you to read their stuff. Gonzalez flees Venezuela for Spain. Venezuela's opposition presidential candidate, and who I would argue is the rightful president of Venezuela, or incoming president of Venezuela, Edmundo Gonzalez, arrived in Spain Sunday after taking a Spanish Air Force plane. Opposition leader Maria Corina Machado said that Gonzalez's life was in danger after the news broke that he had fled. So he is now a president, apparently in exile. And that brings us now to the national front. Two Delta Airlines planes collide on runway at Atlanta Hartsfield Jackson International Airport in Georgia. Looks like a pretty significant collision. It's been weird. There's been a lot of things involving airlines recently. And clearly there needs to be a reevaluation of how things are operating in that industry. Also, again, we're going to start seeing a ramp up of domestic incidents that involve shootings, that involve acts of property damage as we get closer to the election. Gunman shoots vehicles and shuts down interstate. A gunman opened fire on vehicles traveling in a rural section of Interstate 75 Saturday in Kentucky, and there were casualties. The analysis here seems pretty solid, but authorities have said that Joseph Couch, 32, is the primary suspect. An AR-15 rifle was found in a wood area near the interstate by police, as well as Couch's vehicle was found abandoned in the same area. Authorities are believing the shooting was a random act of violence. They don't know that yet because they have not apprehended him. But I find the timing very, very interesting. So we're going to keep our eye on this one and see if this doesn't transform into something a little bit larger than just a random act of violence. Now, on a less serious front, but still pretty serious, okay? Now, I don't know if you are a pet lover, but I am. I love dogs, okay? But cats, they're okay. They are. But regardless, they're pets, okay? And so all over X yesterday, there were reports of Haitian immigrants eating local animals, ducks, geese, cats. And so the meme war has broken out. And so I want to, if we can go down to the video that was posted by Wall Street Silver, absolutely amazing. The system now says that pets are going to vote for Donald Trump. And this has sent the left into apoplexy. It's been actually really funny. Memes with Trump's hair on a cat, voting Trump. Haitians ate my mom, don't eat me. Showing Trump rescuing kitties from a horde of illegal immigrants is really funny stuff. But the fact of the matter is, I just step back and objectively, politically, this is absolutely the worst thing that could have happened to the Democrats, because the portions of Democrat voters that own cats is significant, and it's not a knock against anybody who owns cats, okay? But the fact is, when people start eating pets, that actually is the kind of thing that sways voting blocks. So objectively, something big is happening right now. We'll just see what the fallout is from it. And that brings us to some leaked U.S. Army documents. Thousands of violent Venezuelan prison gang members run amok across the United States. This is in addition to the Haitian migrants we just talked about. So what is happening here is bringing in the administration right now is bringing in the most violent people to, again, sow chaos inside the United States of America prior to and following the election. And we're going to see more of this happen. So if you don't exercise your right to bear arms, you should go get trained, legally exercise your right to bear arms, but you should exercise your right to bear arms, especially in the season that we are coming into. It's good guys with guns that stop bad guys with guns. Now, that brings us to a Western Journal article about Trump. Trump wakes up to encouraging news on the morning of the debate. Kamala appears to be slipping in the newest poll, and this is their polls, by the way, NPR, PBS News. Ugh. Made public Tuesday, Harris was holding a 49 to 48% lead nationally. That's with their methodology, by the way. Pretty interesting. Seems like everybody is shifting right now dramatically toward freedom. Also, again, another indicator of the ramping up of civil unrest in the United States. Protests and small riots are forming as numerous people break into a high-end store, set fires, and commit multiple assaults. Where did this happen? Well, it happened in the heart of Washington, D.C., near the National Museum of Women in the Arts in Chinatown. Approximately 60 people broke into Gucci and other high-end stores, and several small to medium-sized fires were reported in the area. Also, let's take a look really quick. There is a tropical storm, but a projected hurricane, Francine, that will hit You guessed it, right over New Orleans and Louisiana. At least right smack dab in the middle of that. So let's be praying for those people down there. And that brings us lastly to the regional front. Let's see. One major city's scheme that allowed a Christian pastor to be arrested twice because crowds in the streets were triggered to hostility by the words of that pastor has been struck down. I want to read that again. One major city scheme that allowed a Christian pastor to be arrested twice because crowds in the streets were triggered to hostility by his words has been struck down. That major city is Seattle. And if the liberals have a Kleenex, they should probably take it out right now. The demise of Seattle's heckler's veto agenda comes in a consent order that was entered this week in a case brought by First Liberty Institute on behalf of Pastor Matthew Meineke. Meineke was censored and arrested on two separate occasions in 2022 for simply reading the Bible to others because his gospel-oriented message triggered hostile reactions from activists, the legal team explained. But now in the order, which affirms a, quote, complete victory for the pastor, the judge granted a permanent injunctive relief from the unconstitutional police policy, compensatory damages for the wrongful arrests, and nominal damages for the constitutional violations, along with reasonable attorney fees and expenses. A great victory. Seattle put in check, at least for the moment. Also, and very interestingly, an Antifa member was arrested and taken into custody for assaulting journalist Casey Whalen. Now, Casey Whalen is from our area, by the way. Outside of the Clackamas County Courthouse, the suspect had a fit of rage after their Antifa comrade, Alisa Azar, was taken to jail over felony riot conviction. Now, this is the same lady who showed up in Coeur d'Alene a few years ago. Interestingly, right before Patriot Front was exposed, when they were arrested. So, first with Casey Whalen, he's always kind of on the front line there of reporting. And that is the briefing. Remember, the antidote to dependency and socialism is to be a God-fearing, self-reliant, freedom-loving American. Thank you to everyone who has been praying for us. And really, really thank you for all of the follows. We're starting to get huge viewership now. It's been amazing. Thank you for all the prayers and positive comments. If you get a chance, like, share, subscribe, tell your family members about it, and make Patriot Radio a source for them for news and for information as well. Now, we were hoping to have on for our guest today, Mark Sutherland, but we can't seem to get the technical glitches worked out. But we do have David Sumrall. He's among the most effective in the world for releasing the truth about January 6th. And he is putting out one of the most informative events about the truth behind those recent U.S. events since the last election at the 1A, or the First Amendment, Film Fest. You can find more at 1afilmfest.com. David, it's great to have you back on the program. I hope you're doing really well. Just honor you for all of the things you're doing to fight for truth and to expose all the lies that have happened in the Biden regime. And especially all the lies that are keeping those J6 political prisoners behind bars.
Well, I appreciate every opportunity to tell their story, on their behalf, because they can't. And, I think that's the main thing that we need to understand. After 4 years, we're in the same holding pattern. We need more and more hands on deck so we can get this resolved. So thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. So what is your goal at the 1A Film Fest? What do you hope to bring to light that maybe people don't know right now, or hope to update people on as far as apply to the J6 prisoners?
Well, I think J6 is one facet of this film fest. We cover the pandemic. We cover voter issues. We go through J6, the FBI, trafficking, lots of different topics. It's not just a standalone J6 event at all. And I think the thing that we do is use that thread that ties them all together. There's 12 different documentaries, some short films, some full length, feature type films. So I think the education that people get, we're trying to build a tool. We want something that people can share with their friends in their circle, their church group, their political group, their neighborhood, and just have their own watch parties So we're going to do an after edit of this whole weekend and pack it down into just a shorter video, maybe 12 or 13 hours, and let people have their own watch parties and educate each other. I think that's the main key. We've seen this. We've tried to explain it to people, and it just doesn't work. So we show them with our films, and then they get it. So I think, if we can show all the films in a chronological type manner and how this all fits together, it's really a powerful experience.
I think it is very powerful. I mean, it's stunning, actually, the intentionality behind each one of these facets. Whether we're talking the intentionality behind human trafficking and what's been allowed into this country, or the intentionality behind the pandemic, or the intentionality behind what happened with the J6ers. What is your message to people about that might be just waking up to the fact that, hey, some of the things that we thought were good and right maybe in the country weren't or aren't, and also what they can do about it?
Well, I think that's always the lesson that we learn is how to protect ourselves, how to do better, how to protect each other. I think we're getting back to the basics, back to God, and back together. And I think these films kind of tie that together, that no one's coming to save us but ourselves. It really is up to the people to make that stand, to take the action steps necessary. Knowing about it is one thing, but doing something about it is totally different. And we can't let other people run our business for us, our country. We have to do it ourselves. We have to be way more hands-on and take those, like I said, action steps necessary to support the people that are in the fight. A lot of times, we're not the folks that want to go put boots on the ground. And I understand that, but there are plenty of us that need more support, that the American people need to rally behind, like these J6ers that are standing between them and tyranny, and really support them through the process. And just the awareness of that, the education to arm these people with, the true facts, so they can have well-informed conversations with their friends and coworkers and actually know what they're talking about.
Now, Trump's promising investigations into many of these things if he wins. But really, a lot of investigations have actually already been done. I mean, there are a lot of facts out there. There are reams and there are volumes of videos and still photography out there. So let's start on J6. The narrative there is 100, I'm just going to be bold, 180 degrees opposite of what actually was portrayed in the mainstream media. If you could update us a little bit on some of the newer information that's come out, what people should know in regards to J6.
Well, I think one of the biggest things yesterday, they had a field hearing in Washington, D.C. Marjorie Taylor Greene hosted beautiful conversations from a lot of the people that have experienced the fallout from the DOJ and the Board of Prisons. So it was more based on the treatment of the prisoners, the hostages, as we call them, because prisoners actually have rights. These people don't. The solitary, the food, the treatment, the mess, the nastiness in these facilities has come to light. So kind of the other part of that is we had a hearing last year, and what really happened between then and now, not much. So we're seeing this lull before the election, and then everyone rally around for their political points and fundraising. And then we have Trump, that, there's so much heat on him to actually do something actionable the very first day, so that these people don't lose hope. They've waited 4 years. And I know that's a lot of pressure on Trump to do something the first day, but if he doesn't, I fear for their safety. I fear for, some of these people have not been able to make it this long, and they've hurt themselves and taken their own lives up to this point, a lot more than people know about. So the more eyes on the torture from the DOJ, the more eyes on the deaths from January 6th. The American people have been robbed of the emotional experience that everyone else had that day because the media covered it up. You don't know 4 people died. You don't know who they are. You don't know anything about them. You don't know that no police died that day. These are just little things that are finally coming out, that they have re-education for these prisoners that is all anti-Trump, anti-conservative. It's amazing what they've experienced for the last 4 years. And I think it's, past time for people to learn more about it.
Well, that re-education piece is what really stuck with me when I saw the article yesterday, that this is something, my wife is from Ukraine. Her family was in the underground church there. And when Christians were arrested in Ukraine, they were sent to the gulag and they went through, quote, re-education. And to hear that word even being used inside the United States is alarming, to say the least. So let's talk a little bit about what happened to the prisoners and what attempts were made to, quote, re-educate them.
Well, it starts before they are convicted. A lot of these lawyers will give them information. Here, watch these films, study this material, and they're trying to make them think they did something wrong, that, that they went for other reasons than they even went for, and interject all these things in their mind. And then through the process, that's part of the penalty, part of the punishment is to make them suffer through these horrible things. It's almost like the church situation in the prisons. You can't get, let's just say, Baptist Christian material. It's all, we'll say, Muslim material, Farrakhan, things like that. So there's an intentional manipulation of the truth inside and out of the prison. And then, of course, the blame game, guilt trip stuff that they try to put these guys like they did something wrong when they didn't. So it's so layered. There's so many different levels, and it's almost like it's different for each and every one of these people because of the tactics the DOJ uses. So, as specialized as they are, they're still the same in the fact that, you look up terrorism in the dictionary and literally you see the definition of our government.
Yeah, I know. And when you expose it, and this is, I think, the key point, they will call you the terrorist. When you expose terrorism inside our government, they will try to call you the terrorist. And I think that it would be really encouraging for them, all of the J6 prisoners, to understand that they were forerunners, that they were really on the cutting edge of exposing this corruption inside the system. Because, you take Venezuela, for example, we're seeing a very similar situation where there were legitimate questions about the voter rolls, legitimate questions about how the votes were counted, et cetera, in the election in Venezuela. And people began to protest and raise the question about that. And yet our folks right now, they're languishing as hostages in jail. And I think that for them to hold on to that thread that, yeah, you were forerunners, you were the ones that actually emboldened the people in Venezuela to stand up. You were the ones that emboldened the people in Brazil to stand up with the largest free speech rally in history here a few days ago in just amazing form, what they did, all peaceful. I think that's encouraging for them. And I want you to just kind of weigh in on your thoughts. What does that mean for us in this election? Have we done enough to actually ensure the integrity of the system? Not talking about voting for one or the other, but just the integrity of the system and the Constitution.
No, absolutely not. And that's why it's such a volatile time. Even Obama back in the day said, when you lose faith in the elections, it's the beginning of the end. Your society is going to crumble or whatnot. And that's what they wanted. There's an intentionality to it. And we see that, whether it's COVID, whether it's J6, whether it's the election, there's this same intentionality. But you touched on something that's brilliant. And I just want to mention it. It's the global aspect, and here's the thing. Yes, J6 happened. If these guys had bent the knee and gone home, there would be no investigation. There would be no big expose. But they didn't. They stood the test and they're fighting the fight. And then that same FBI that went after them went up to Canada and did the same thing to the truckers. And then they went down to Brazil and helped the Brazilians do the same thing to those people. And then they go to the UK. So I want to show people this is a global thing. It's a crackdown on this whole verbiage and the domestic violent extremist talk that we're a threat to persons or property. And then they can J6 you, So they're setting a precedence with J6ers that people have really not kept up with. We've seen politicians say things like they need to be re-educated. And we've gotten to the point where we laugh at it and go, oh man, that's crazy. Right. Ha ha. And then we post a comment, you're an idiot. And then we go on about our business. They were serious and we don't listen a lot of times. And I think that's been kind of our downfall because we didn't, like Obama, hope and change, and look what happened. Fundamental changes that are hard to reverse again.
So how can people participate in the 1A Film Festival?
Well, it's really easy. Go to 1afilmfest.com and get a live stream ticket. And like I said, that $125 ticket, will send you another email a couple of weeks after with another version of it. But it's all the interviews, the awards, the Q&A, all the movies, the ambiance. It's going to be a really amazing event in that respect. but I think, the shareability of it, and people have asked, how can we donate? We really didn't set it up to take donations. We encourage people to buy extra tickets and give them to your friends. If you want to give $100, buy 4 tickets and give those tickets to somebody that may not go to a rally or a function, but may sneak around and watch a movie or two or all because they got it in an email. So, it's worth the risk. Maybe it can change somebody's life and help them make right decisions about this next election. But that's the push, is to provide this tool before the election in time for people to use it. And 1afilmfest.com, it's real easy. You just click on the live stream link and buy your tickets and be ready. And if you can watch this weekend,
go ahead.
Yeah, if you can watch this weekend, great. If not, you can watch at your leisure. And then, of course, that second edition will come out.
So I presume there's been a little bit of censorship on this.
There always is. And we found that about the events. Every time we do events, it's like that. Or the movies, some of the documentaries that we put out have gone skyrocket and then death, instant death spiral. So what we're doing in this is trying to have a nice live stream event, trying to do a good thing and let people participate from around the world. It's, on the internet, so it's easy. But then afterwards, when we make the post-edit production, we really want people, grassroots level, to share that as a tool. And by that, you have your $25 ticket, invite 100 people to come watch, and it's paid for. So we're trying to provide the tools for people to educate themselves and have smart discussions and try to explain to other people what's actually going on with facts and evidence that is irrefutable. These are all evidence-based films. They're not projection. They're not fairy tales. And the interviews are amazing. But there's a schedule for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The live stream only covers Saturday and Sunday, and then we'll backfill Friday night into the post-production.
Well, that sounds fantastic. And always, I try to give a little bit of space, too, for people to encourage the J6 prisoners, maybe write them, communicate with them. How can people do that?
So Letters from Prison is the best place. On my website at stophate.com, you can scroll down and see affiliates, support groups. Patriot Mail Project is the biggest, and American Gulag Chronicles is actually one of the big sponsors of this film fest, and it's the Letters from Prison books. So you can go to lettersfromprison.us, lettersfromprison.us, and see their website as well. Pick up a couple of books for history or for friends or for gifts. It's all information that the media has kept from people. And Unredacted Media is the other sponsor. It's bringing these kind of films and books and more that have been censored and shadow banned to the public, to where we can actually see some of the work that these people put out and recognize, I think, the sacrifice not only of the producers and directors, but the people who are living it that are in the films. And I want people to really pay attention to not only, hey, it's a great event and it's entertaining or it's whatever, but think about the blood, sweat, and tears that went into the productions, the stories of these people's lives, what they suffered to bring this information, and the bravery it takes in so many ways to be public about that.
And a couple teasers, if you would. 1,000 Days of Terror. What can people expect?
1,000 Days of Terror is a 5.5-minute short film that shows exactly how the violence on January 6th started over on the West Terrace. Everybody's familiar with that side, but they never showed you who started the violence. We have names, badge numbers, the whole 9 yards, but it's an interesting, it covers about 15 or 20 minutes of the day, and that's all. It's a very short film. It's very pointed in what it explains. So I think people really enjoy that one.
And also The War on Truth, a very provocative title. I think it's important that people understand what is in that as well.
Listen, people have given rave reviews. This is Chris Burgard and Nick Searcy's film. Their second film, first was Capital Punishment. It's the follow-up, and it goes through, I couldn't tell you how many interviews from people who have suffered at the hand of the DOJ and the FBI, the raids of their homes and their children and families. And it's an amazing explanation of how the government has declared war on the people.
In the last few minutes of the show, what can people be doing now at the local level to stand? I always have these conversations. People are, well, I just don't want to, waste my time or be ineffective or give my money to an ineffective cause, or, what should I really be doing that would be an effective use of my time and my resources? What would your answer be to that, especially in the run-up to the election?
it's the hardest thing, man, because we want to do things that make a national impact, of course, but the local impact is so much more important in our daily lives. And we see how that does ripple out into the bigger picture. So you start local, it goes state, it goes national. I understand. But being involved in even your city council or your school board meetings, knowing what's going on in your neighborhood or a neighborhood meeting, association group, whatnot, communication with your next door neighbors is probably the most important thing. And I just want people to think real quick, when you go to the grocery store, there's not people of different races throwing produce in cans and stuff at each other, because that's really not reality, is it? Mm-hmm. So we need that same conversation, that same passing by in these neighborhoods. We all live inside our homes now and don't know who our neighbors are half the time. We really have to get back to that grassroots, next door community mentality so that we can explain to folks, hey, we don't want a civil war. We don't want to fight people just because we don't see eye to eye about something, or we don't agree about politics or whatever. We don't want to fight. That's not what this is about. We've been labeled, and we really have to work super hard to make people know that that's not who we are.
Amen. Relationship one at a time. That's exactly right. Now, I know Mark Sutherland couldn't make it on. The UK seems like it's kind of a train wreck right now. I don't even recognize that country right now. Completely overwhelmed. Values being espoused that are completely antithetical to Western civilization. You see wave after wave after wave of migration into that country, and people who are trying to even dare to question it are now being arrested in England and for that matter, Ireland. Just a few comments on that, and maybe doing your best to channel your inner Mark Sutherland. What would he say if he was here right now?
He'd say, "What's the mood over there? What's the mood?" That's exactly what he would say. Oh no, listen, it is. You nailed the words, train wreck. And let me tell you, just from what he talks about and visiting, through the big cities and stuff, it's horrible. And we see that as a test market for what they're going to bring to America little by little. And they already are. When people are getting arrested for what they say or feel about something, now they don't have the same freedom laws that we do here that are God-given, inalienable or unalienable, however you want to pronounce rights, that the government's trying to take from us. Here, we're getting the same thing already. If you make a Facebook or social media, or like I did, if you say something about a judge, the FBI is going to show up at your house. They've been to my house 5 times. Wow. What are y'all saying? How many times have they been to y'all's house? See what I'm saying? So there is a time to be bold and strong and loud and honest and truthful and have courage in these times, folks, because it's not going to go away if we put the covers over our head. That's for sure. And the monster in the closet, gosh, man, let's just drag him out, expose him, and show that he's a lot wimpier than he thinks when there's a whole bunch of us. And we can do this together. That's my whole message, is left to right. It really doesn't matter. My enemy is not my neighbor or my political different thinker. It's the government. They pit us against each other. It's divisive. That's the whole purpose of January 6th, was to drive a wedge between the American people so they could further their control and make that global shift. But we're pushing back, and we're not going to let that happen.
That's exactly right. My enemy is not my neighbor. And for that matter, my dinner is not my neighbor's cat. We're going to add that now.
It's great, man. Wow.
Well, David, thank you so much for joining me on Patriot Radio today. Blessings to you. Keep up the fight. Really appreciate everything you're doing, and let us know how else we can help.
Thank you so much. We hope to see y'all at 1afilmfest.com. Thanks again for having me, brother.
Awesome. 1afilmfest.com, 1afilmfest.com. Also, Michael Smith, we actually screened both of his movies here, but Into the Light is going to be on the schedule there as well at 1A Film Fest. And I wanted to kind of take a few minutes here at the end of the show and go through some memes, because it's been, I laughed myself to sleep last night with the different memes that people were coming up with regarding protecting their cats. Now, one of my favorite is the, I don't know, we'll call this the Donald Trump cat meme that somebody did a really good job of putting this together. But this was cats after reading X yesterday. Notice the red power tie as well because, well, Donald Trump is going to make pets safe again. And if you scroll down from that, you can see some really hilarious pictures of a cat sleeping, for example, with a pistol to defend itself. I really enjoy this kind of stuff because this drives the other side absolutely crazy. Then you've got Donald Trump hugging a cat and, of course, a duck, because we can't leave ducks out. I mean, ducks make good pets as well. So I think we all need to help the cause out with memes today. And I think hashtag save the cats. I think hashtag save the ducks. My enemy is not my neighbor. My enemy's pet is not my dinner. Needs to be a new hashtag. Well, maybe that's a t-shirt somebody can come up with. Let us know if you're going to do that. We'll feature it here on Patriot Radio. But how crazy is this, ladies and gentlemen? Would we have thought that this would happen 10 years ago? That illegal immigrants and people that should be glad just to be here in the United States would be eating people's pets. Absolutely incredible. So I want to talk about what's coming here in the next couple of months and kind of the shift that I'm seeing, what I'm hearing behind the scenes as we close out the show today. Again, there is a ramping up of civil unrest here in the United States. Starting in Washington, D.C. here just yesterday, you're seeing, again, stores being looted, plundered again, small fires being set. Seeing targeting of Christian leaders like Greg Locke. There's been others as well. Political leaders, targeting of their property. The ramping up of violent rhetoric among Marxist groups inside the United States. You see the exposing, to a limited extent, of Chinese intelligence networks and infiltration networks here in the United States. But just like Sam Faddis has brought up, and many others, there are quite literally intelligence collection networks inside the United States government for our adversaries, specifically Iran, China, Russia. And if we just kind of look the other way with this stuff, it's never going to be dealt with. And Trump can't do this by himself. A lot of this is going to happen here at the local level. A lot of this is going to happen with county prosecutors and county sheriffs beginning to investigate and disrupt communist and jihadi networks in this country. Now, right here in Spokane County, there is a Muslim Brotherhood footprint. Now, understand that entities in the Holy Land Foundation trial that were listed as unindicted co-conspirators, that was upheld on appeal as members of the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States, but also working with terrorist organizations like Hamas, that we have it in our own backyard here. We have Chinese agents attempting to buy property here in the United States, in Washington State, in Eastern Washington. Why? Well, it all fits into this plan that they agreed on, they being the Chinese and the Russians and the military intelligence apparatus of those two countries in 1991, to invade the United States using a strategy the Germans used in World War II to invade Norway. In other words, to surreptitiously bring in secretly, guess what's happening at our southern border, and for that matter, our northern border too, agents, special forces into this country, pre-position weapons, pre-position explosives in this country for some 0 hour in the future to add to or to foment chaos in the United States. Now, I've got to tell you something. If the Chinese believe that Trump is going to win, they truly believe he's going to win, and they don't invade Taiwan, then they think they're going to wait another 4 years for more favorable conditions. Or they're going to think we don't have a better chance in this lifetime, and they're going to do something here in the next month and a half, between September and October. You have other indices of a pandemic being ginned up, the narrative. They started with the monkeypox, but really the bird flu is kind of what's coming to the fore right now. And they're even having a bird flu summit. They even have a bird flu summit website. Then you have indicators, and great news organizations like Zero Hedge are saying that there are indicators right now of a stock market crash coming in the very near future. Now, I want you to bookmark this episode. Remember, we're talking about these things, okay? And then you have the ever-present specter of a cyber attack and or a tactical nuclear weapon being detonated inside the United States according to a Soviet plan exposed by Stanislav Lunev. So with all of these situations, it really doesn't change what we should be doing locally. And that is, we need to be disrupting these networks, investigating these networks. As the public, we need to be calling attention to these things. And as Christians, we are admonished in Scripture to expose evil. That's what it says. Expose it. Don't partner with it. So as Christians, we should be exposing evil wherever we can, educating our friends, our family, our neighbors, and also preparing to come through these tough times, and on the other end, restore the republic. Now, there are some people who say, I don't want to talk about any of these things because they're, quote, political. Actually, they're not. That's a lie. There's a false gospel. They're not political. They're biblical. We are actually supposed to be involved in these things in every area and exposing corruption and driving evil out of our society. That is a duty as Christians. So these are biblical issues. And it's incumbent upon all of us to live up to those biblical commands. This is Matt Shea. Thank you for joining me so much today on Patriot Radio. May God bless all of you. He is making this generation the greatest one. The awakening is here. This is the greatest time to be alive. Keep up the fight.